Hi, everybody. I'm going to check that my headphones are on, and they're not. But they are now. And I am just going to welcome you to this reading. I am the Cosmic Queen and your intergalactic interpreter, Vie Darling, coming to you from a place that doesn't matter. Let me turn my volume down. I just wanted to put on some nice healing angelic frequency beats to really get me in my zone. We're talking about the 888 Lionsgate portal, and we are talking about the new moon. And honestly, I just want to get right into the insights as soon as possible because I just don't really have a lot of time to mince right now. Let's talk about it. And you guys see it. I know you see it right over there. I'm just opening up my notes. So the first thing that I want to speak to, I think we were going to speak to the degrees of Aries in the Eris in Aries. You know what? So I want to read from the Sabian symbols for where Eris is right now during the 88 Lionsgate portal. And for more information about what the Lionsgate portal is, I would recommend watching the video that I posted on IGTV. It's from a live that I did. Eris is in 24 degrees of Aries for this transit, and the phase is the 24th. It is blown inward by the wind. The curtains of an open window take the shape of a cornucopia. Keynote: openness to the influx of spiritual energies. The principle of abundance is brought to a further stage in this rather cryptic symbol. Physical fruition is shown operating at a more subtle and spiritual level. The wind, pneuma, spirit, blows through the open window, mind window, and brings into the house a personality of the promise of more than the material potency. Wind blows from a region of high pressure to one of low pressure. As the window curtains are blown inward, the individual consciousness represented by the house is receiving a more concentrated influx of spiritual energies, enabling this consciousness to extend the scope of its awareness and free of expression. This message applying to this fourth stage of the fivefold sequence is that inner growth demands not just an open mind, but one able to provide a container for a spiritual harvest. The cornucopian shape of the window's curtains suggests that the subtler translucent aspect of the mind, the curtains, has acquired a plastic quality, enabling it to be molded by transpersonal forces. So we're going to pray our way in. Spirit, ground me, guide me, lead me, purify me in your energy. I want me to see what it is you want me to see. I want me to say what it is you want me to say. Prepare these messages for me to give to the collective, that I may be an instrument of yours, a tool of yours, a vessel of yours to use for your divine wisdom. Healed whole ancestors, angels, guides, entities, healed whole sacred divine energies. I would allow you to transmit messages through me for the collective regarding this meaning and this is happening today. Amen. 𝗯аше. So let's get into it, because I just thought that that was really important. There's the five foods of inner person. That's not just an open mind, but one able to provide a container for a spiritual harvest. It's not just about being just like I've said, like the spiritual life is not a theory, it must be lived. It's not just about what ideas you hold, it's about actually walking in that truth and like practicing those principles and ideas, whatever those are, to you. And so I invite all of us to really bear that in mind. Sometimes, we believe in something, but we don't do the things necessary because it has to do with Aries. I do think that this has to do with, if Aries is related to the root chakra, I do think that this, and the first house, I always say it's primal, it relates to the root chakra, the first house, and that really has to do with Aries a lot. And I think that Eris is, as the sister of Aries, Eris has a lot to do with the second chakra, which is the sacral chakra. And it is about, living in our truth and not being ashamed of our truth and not being afraid of our truth. Just like being free, allowing ourselves to be free, allowing the chains to come off, because it is, as I've been saying, like, the chains, take over, the breaks over. Like, we are stepping into our self-sovereignty with this energy here. And so, yeah, it's really about like making sure that we are in alignment. And this has been a time of us processing how to get into alignment, a lot of us getting into alignment, and what has fallen away as we have gone into alignment, and just being able to like let that go and being able to breathe that. It's a very important part of the process, and it just is what it is. And so I do want to bring some attention to, we have whole sign, not equal. Yeah, so in the first house, this makes a lot of sense. In the first house, we have Uranus and Fortuna in Taurus. And so what does that mean? That means that, like, our relationships are really receiving a jolt of lightning, some earthquake energy, some like seismic shift energy, for innovation to be led in. And it's really just important that we lean into this energy. Remember that everything in life is relationship. Like, we have a relationship with ourselves, and every other relationship that we have is predicated on that. In the past, for me, I can really only speak for myself in this case. I do think that a lot of people, because Saturn has been in Capricorn the past 3 years, I think, and it's still there sidereally, I think that a lot of people are getting very clear on what, so I'll show you guys, because that's why we have the chart up. So here it is. A lot of people are feeling, getting more clarity on their lives and what their life purpose is, their dharma, like what is the reason for all of this, like who do I want to be, am I the person that I say that I am, like really looking at our principles, really looking at our foundation, looking at our core center, and seeing like, is this something that I align with? Do I actually believe these things? It has been a paradigm shift, and a paradigm shift isn't something that happens overnight. So when people are like, oh, like a consciousness shift, like all this stuff, oh, this is already been supposed to be happening. I thought you said this was happening so and so many years ago. Well, it's a really huge deal. So if it took thousands of years for us to get to a place where we all believe this. These sorts of things take time. It's a process. It's not an event. It's an active process. Even when it doesn't feel like that much is happening, still stuff is still going on. And so, we've been going through those changes and experiencing those changes. I think that a lot of this has to do also with the fact that Saturn and Jupiter are once again in the same house, in the same sign. They're in Aquarius. Saturn retrograde and Jupiter retrograde in Aquarius, which is affected by Uranus, of course. And excuse me. this is affected by that, of course. And so there is this like internal expansion that's really like we're really going over, because when we have retrogrades, it means that we are reviewing things, we are recollecting things. And it's a very internal process, and we're going over things that we missed the last time. So this is why I said, like, with the Lionsgate portal, I think it's important to go back and think about where you were last year and what lessons you were learning. And from this point last year to this point now, like, what have been the common themes? What have been the major themes? You know, what have been the points of pride? What have been the points of lowness, of pain? And how do we shift out of that space of pain? And how do we give ourselves more reasons to be filled with gratitude? And that's really what you want to bring in and focus on. Because these two transpersonal placements, I do feel like a lot of it is going to have to do with our relationships, the things inside of ourselves, like what's holding us back, what's holding us down, what's keeping us from stepping into our abundance. That's going to be a major theme for a lot of us. Like, what is it that's keeping us from stepping into our abundance? And so it could be people, it could be places, it could be things, it could be institutions, it could be mindsets, it could be a lot of things. It could even be time periods, like, it could be whatever. You make the decision. You make the decision that you're either going to align yourself with what is for you and what you've always really truly wanted in your heart, and you're going to just flow into that and, like, you know, do what you have to do to get there, which is never going to require you causing harm, which is never going to require you compromising your integrity. And causing harm is not the same thing as someone being hurt by the things that we say or do. Causing harm is like, you know, that's unnecessary. People getting hurt over things is really to do with them. Causing harm is something to do with us. And so I think that's very important distinction to point out. What I will also say is that we have some oppositions. We have, I think, Venus here in Virgo in the 5th house is going to be very important, because we have almost a grand trine here between Uranus, Venus, and Scorpio in the 9th there, and Venus in the 5th, almost a grand trine, but it is not one. And then we have an opposition, Venus and Neptune, which is retrograde in its home of Pisces in the 11th house. Now, Venus in opposition to Neptune retrograde is where have we been in out of alignment with ourselves, and what ways have we not been allowing ourselves to receive our abundance? For some of us, it might be, you know, not having the right, like, not being confident enough to believe that we are deserving of it. You know, saying that, like, oh, I don't deserve this, like, no, like, I'm not good enough for this, or like, oh, when this happens, then when I'm this kind of way, then I'll be better, and then I can have the thing that I want. It's like, no, just allow yourself to be worthy of it. You already are. See that and allow yourself to be worthy of receiving it as you are in the here and now, and whatever happens from there on. Once you have that idea that you are worthy, you start to align frequencies with whatever it is. So I think that's really, you know, I want to say remain heart open, remain heart centered, but also remain, like, you know, have pride in yourself. Like, realize what it is that you do deserve. Is like, honestly, we all deserve and have always deserved unconditional love, unconditional respect, you know, human decency, because we're all children of spirit, we're all children of source, you know. we all have that divine spark within us, and that deserves to be honored. The way that we can honor it in ourselves is by honoring it in others and choosing to really stay in that space, because a lot of what has to do with this Lionsgate portal is about spiritual warfare and not letting ourselves get caught up or distracted by anything that doesn't have to do with us. Like, even if folks try to make stuff our problem, it doesn't have to be. I was listening to a Dharma talk this morning from this, there's a YouTube page called 𝗪𝗱, and these Buddhist monks, I think it's Tibetan Buddhism, they were talking about like creating safe spaces for ourselves. And essentially one of the things that they were saying is like, you know, we as human beings, we can be very political. And so we want to be liked, or we want we want to be liked, we want to be able to get what we want, which can cause us to be disingenuous. One of the things that I wrote down in my notes for the Lionsgate portals, like, disingenuity is a very heavy burden. Lies are a very heavy burden. It weighs down our hearts. It creates, you know, fragmentation within us. And like, what has been very clear to me for the past like few weeks now is that like the points in our fractal that, you know, fractals, they are patterns that go on endlessly. But we also know that as a physical and hermetic principle, something will continue going until a force brings it to a stop. Energy will continue in a direction until it is brought to a stop by another force, which is maybe something that like is just more powerful than it, right? So if we're allowing shadow aspects of ourselves to be removed, to be transformed in the light of spirit, that is unconditional love and integrity and truth. That means, you know, accountability. They can mean like acceptance, awareness, acceptance, accountability, more acceptance, because acceptance is going to always be there. And we got to bring in that principle of unconditional love. As I said, you know, all of that comes in, and all of that becomes really powerful. And it removes those shadow aspects of us, which they can always come back if we allow them to. But as long as we're doing the work, you know, those things tend to stay at bay. But that fractal shifts, and it will continue going on endlessly in that way, where that shadow aspect, like if you think about it, I will show you. So if you think about it as if it were this, right? This is the pattern that keeps coming up, and we don't like that. If we can fill this with light and remove it as much as we possibly can, fill this with light, fill this with gold. It's like that golden repair that they talk about. Fill it with light, fill it with gold, fill it with love, unconditional love, integrity, do the shadow work. And that chasm gets filled, right? And we do that here. Soon, when that part of the fractal pattern is removed from the source, we being the source, this being the way that life manifests from within us. If we remove that pattern from the source, it will not play out in the world around us. So if we do the shadow work, as we have been doing, and this process in the past year has been about that removal and that shadow work and that reconfiguration of our DNA and implementation of light DNA, which is higher vibrational, it takes us out of that lower vibrational space, then we just start to manifest like that. And I hope that makes sense. Because I know that obviously it could be a little bit hard to understand if you don't understand fractals, but basically what I'm saying is like, what I really think that is best for us to ask for in our manifestations with this 888 portal is like really just seeing ourselves for who we are and what we are and like where we are going, and not really asking like, oh, I want this thing, but being clear on like, what can I get rid of within myself so that I don't play out these same patterns and I find ways to get closer to the things that I want. And so it's not just one specific event that I want or one specific thing that I want. It's a lifestyle that I want, a lifestyle of peace and harmony. How can we get these two things to meet in the middle? Because our fear, this feels like fear to me. Our fear associated with being different and about not having, you know, about not being accepted, about not having whatever it is that we think that we need, not being fulfilled as far, especially as our social needs go. But wanting to be who we are and wanting healing and wanting peace and wanting love and, wanting to be in love with our life. We have to meet in the middle. We have a crossroads here between Jupiter retrograde in the 10th house in Aquarius and Mercury in the 4th house in Leo. It's a lot. And I do think that this has a lot to do with humility, and it meets in the center of like making space within ourselves to get super clear on like, okay, what do I have to change in me, the source in me? Because the ultimate reality is that the universe is just some algorithms, and it is a flow of unconditional love and integrity. And like once we're in integrity and once we're practicing unconditional love, things start to feel a lot better. So what can we get rid of within ourselves? Whatever attachments to things that keep us from being in our pillar of light is what we have to get rid of. And so let's talk about the full moon chart, or the new moon chart, the new moon in Leo. The moon and the sun are conjunct in the 9th house. And actually, I don't want to use this house system. Let's do whole sign. They are conjunct in the 9th house with Mercury. There's a crossroads here, but they are making an opposition to Jupiter, or Saturn, excuse me, Saturn retrograde, and it's making a square to Uranus, which is in the 6th house in Taurus, and that's making the same to the 9th house, sun and moon. And however, we do get some relief in the form of this trine to Venus in the 10th house. And what this means to me is we have an opportunity for tremendous growth, but it requires us stepping out of the patterns, as I said, those fractals patterns. It may have been encoded in us at some point along the way through indoctrination, through genetics, whatever, doesn't matter. Maybe it's karma, who knows? It is about breaking generational curses. It is about breaking those boundaries. And what do? That means that we have to do something differently. We have to not perpetuate the same kind of behaviors. We have to turn the light on, just turn the light on and scatter all of that shadow. And that might be hard, that might be scary, that might be difficult, but what what's the alternative? Living smaller than you want to for the rest of your life. Like, imagine, you know, if you are in a cage from a very young age, you never grow. Like, your limbs don't grow properly. You don't ever grow to be the fullness of who you are, and you'd probably be crazy. You'd probably be very mentally unwell. And so if you turn the lights on and then you find like, oh, maybe somebody was telling you that there was a cage there this whole time, and the reality is like, oh, actually there's no cage. Like, actually, like, it's fine. I can like go where I need to go. I can do what I need to do. I can get free, you know, all of that. And then it's a choice of whether or not you're going to do that. And so with this being a new moon, this is the start of a new cycle. And I think that it really just is important to be aware of and not acknowledge the things, you know, the unhealthy patterns and where they start within us, and not think about it having to do with the rest of the world. What is it within us, and what can we change within us? And yes, there are going to be things that have to change in the real world and the tangible world and the temporal world, but that doesn't need to be our focus. What really needs to be our focus is like what we can do to liberate ourselves. And so what I want to do is I want to do a little spread, and we're going to do a card for spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical, what is being impacted here. And so spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, and so for spiritual, we get trust the niggle. What is the niggling feeling trying to tell you? For mental, we get answer the call. What is your soul calling you to do? We got it in the reverse position for mental. The great gathering for emotional. It's all coming together. Intuitive hits, soul tribe in the reverse position. And then we get warrior woman for physical. Have you answered your deepest calling? What I think for spiritual, trust the niggle, it means like we have to trust our intuition, because that's going to be like everything else. The mental and emotional is in reverse because we're standing in our own way and we are not trusting our intuition. So we are going in the wrong direction and wondering why things are happening to us. But it's like, wow, we have to trust the intuition. If it's like subtle and it's subtle and it's subtle, and then you're still not listening, then yes, you're going to have a big wake-up call, and that's just going to have to be that's just going to be what you have to deal with. Answer the call for a mental. What is your soul calling you to do? And I feel like it's in the reverse position because it's like the way that she's looking is kind of like forlorn, like she's looking off into the distance, but with it having been in the reverse, I think that it's like looking off into the past. We're too distracted with the past to be able to like step into what our future is. And it's time for us to like look out and look at the sunrise that's coming, and like go into this new life, and, you know, stop thinking so much and just start doing, just start living, just start experiencing and feeling. And like, that's what I get for mental, emotional, the great gathering. It's all coming together. Intuitive hits, soul tribe in the reverse. I think that a lot of us have been too afraid to engage with the truth of ourselves. And so we're staying outside of we're afraid to make connections with the people who are really for us because we are afraid of our worth. We are afraid of our value. But what we have to understand is that we are, you know, invaluable. There's no comparison. Like, we are so valuable. We are so powerful. We are so loved unconditionally. And once we step into our truth, more of the people who align with our truth will find us. It requires us being in our truth and honoring our truth and not being ashamed of it and not being afraid of it. I'm going to use queerness. If you are queer identifying sexually and you are forcing yourself to be in heterosexual relationships because you're ashamed of your queerness, and you are wondering like, oh my God, why am I not finding my person? Why am I so unhappy in my relationships? I don't understand. Like, oh, I'm so sad all the time. I'm so depressed. It's like, well, you're betraying yourself and you're putting yourself in unfulfilling emotional situations where you're actually harming yourself. And you're not ever going to find those people until you just be there and be who you really are. And then we have other people who are living their truth, but they are hurting others because they don't love themselves. And so they are like taking their internalized homophobia and taking it out on their partners or other queer identifying people there. And, that is harmful to both parties. And so you take this and you run with it in terms of all of your relationships. It doesn't only have to be romantic. Whatever parts of ourselves we feel ashamed of, those are the parts that are going to keep being mirrored back to us until we can integrate them and love them, and exist in harmony with them. We have Neptune retrograde, and now that's the fourth house is there in Pisces. And so that's a very watery energy. It's just like, getting into harmony with ourselves so that we can get into harmony with the world around us. And that goes back to what I was saying about those fractal codes. Once we, basically, it's like if you're coding and you add some lines of code that take care of the bug. I don't know if this makes sense to people, but it's just essentially removing the disease from the source so that everything that comes from the source is no longer diseased. And it's really that simple. That's what we have to do with our consciousness. That's what we have to do with ourselves. And that's the practice of shadow work. So the physical, we get warrior woman. Have you answered the deepest calling? Do what you have to do. Be unafraid, be unabashed, because as you can see with her here with this light behind her, and that's the Akash, you were born to do this. So the universe is going to help you do this all the time. And if you try to do anything else, the universe is always going to redirect you back to there. You are supported in doing it. Lead from your heart and you will always be okay. You were protected, you were put here to do a certain thing and just do it. Nobody is going to stop you from doing it. We're going to use the crystal oracle decks to just clarify anything. And so I want to say yes. Three of Cups for spiritual, trust the niggle. We get the Three of Cups in the reverse position. And this is from the Crystal Oracle deck. And I feel like this is really asking us to trust our inner power, because we are actually really powerful and we do receive the messages. I feel like this is saying a lot of us are actually really psychic and really tuned in. And maybe we don't believe that. And we just pretend we are smaller than we are, and perhaps we've done things in the past where we couldn't trust ourselves, but once we start doing things to regain that trust and relationship with ourselves, and with our spiritual self, and really start living the spiritual life, of course if you don't have any relationship with spirit or source or whatever, you're not going to be trusting of that. But once you start to develop that relationship on your own, you will be able to come into that. It's going to get stronger and it's going to get more brilliant. So when people are oh, how can you do the things that you do? It's okay, well, I trusted that I was able to do them, and I practiced for many, many years, and I've gotten better at it, and I've gotten more sensitive. People who know me from when I started this practice, before I even started charging for this, before I started doing it professionally, I had to write everything down. I had to make a chart with graphics that helped me to understand what I was seeing and how these things interacted with one another. And I would have to look in my book. I used Parker's astrology at that time. And now I can look at the chart and I can just tell you, this is what I see here, and this is what I see here. I've tuned in, and so I really encourage people to do that. What I think is being impacted with this new moon is really calling us to do that work more for ourselves and really center ourselves in the spiritual life. And, that's what I think Spirit wants for all of us, is to really center ourselves in the spiritual life, because everything, as you all know, this is for the Patreon, as you all know, everything stems from that space. So once that gets in alignment, everything else will get in alignment too. We get the High Priestess in the reverse position. So we have a lot of reversals. And I think that like once we remove our ego and we actively, like the ego deck doesn't have to be that painful. I feel like that has already happened. Now it's just a matter of us accepting the lessons and living from the lessons and, you know, really going hard for that life that we say that we want instead of continuing to perpetuate the old patterns. So you get the High Priestess in the reverse for mental, and remember, Answer the Call was also in reverse. So this is what that looks like in the direct position. You know, it says to me that like we have decided that we want a certain type of life, and High Priestess is associated with the number 11. She has butterflies all around her. We have decided that we want a certain kind of life that doesn't actually align with our spiritual truth, but like we have to accept that like it's coming and it's like we're being changed, and like, you know, there's this, we're coming into our power, we're stepping into our power, and it's going to take time for it to play out, and we just have to be patient, but it's happening. You know, if we allow ourselves to get scared and be like, oh my God, I don't think it's going to happen. Of course, each and every single one of us has moments of weakness. I recently had a moment of weakness again too, because I was just, sometimes I get scared that the things that I want or the things that I'm working towards are never going to come and happen for me. But the reality is like, sometimes things just take time to happen, and everything has its natural time. You know, nature works in patterns and rhythms and waves, and everything, like we have to just trust that everything is as it's meant to be. If we are showing up and we are doing what it is that we have to do, we just have to like surrender to knowing that like we did what we had to do and just be okay with what life is giving us. And so for the Great Gathering in reverse, for emotional, I get strength in reverse. And this is about like inner strength. Like we have to be confident in who we are, like Lionsgate portal, and we get that lion with the strength card, and the Great Gathering, which is social, and it's Leo season. And this to me is saying like we have to really come to love who we are. And as long as we are holding on to false narratives, old narratives that don't align with us, like this also says to me like we are departing from the past. We are moving into a new epoch. We are moving into a new time in our lives where like it's not gonna be the same way that it was before. And so, you know, we have to just remain confident. We don't need to bring that negative energy. And actually, this is an 8 card as well. We need to remember our lessons. We don't need to bring that negative energy, like as far as emotions go, like, you know, really just being strong and being like centered in self-love and self-respect, and like not letting anything like get us off of the beam. And that does require a lot of spiritual strength. That does require a lot of mental strength. It does require having healthier boundaries. And like I said, like it's okay to have moments of weakness where like that's human, but we don't need to live in those spaces. We don't need to stay in those spaces. What we need to do is just, you know, feel our feelings, express our feelings, and continue flowing into where we're supposed to be. So, you know, when we're calling in these relationships, we have to be open to them. We have to be open to receiving them. We have to like practice just having self-confidence and like don't, and I'm looking at the bottom of the deck and I get the 5 of Cups in reverse. I don't know why Spirit wanted to show me that, but like it seems like there's a lot of inner sadness. It seems like there's a lot of like things feel out of balance within ourselves because she has spilled 3 cups and 2 of them are still standing, and the fairies are trying to remind her about them. It's like the past happened and that's okay, but like ultimately we have to just focus on what we do have because we are very abundant. That's like really an important aspect of what is coming through for us here. And so last card I get is it's wow, all reverse and almost all major arcana, but we get the Wheel of Fortune in the reverse position for physical with Warrior Woman, and that's very interesting. where you get the unknown. I feel like we are stepping into, and then we get the Four of Swords. You're just in the reverse position. Don't carry these burdens with you anymore. You don't need to know what is out there. All you need to know is that you can handle it. And once you do, you prove that to yourself by actually showing up and building your courage and like just being brave and just showing up and doing your best. And sometimes things work and sometimes they don't, but that's okay. Not everything's always going to happen the way that we think it's going to, but that's okay. That's part of life. What I want to say with this is like with the Wheel of Fortune in reverse, like the power lives within us and we have to activate it. It's really time, like, we're still divesting from all of these past hurts. We're divesting from all of these past ways of being. I say with like Four of Swords, it's like, once again, those mindsets and those like fractals that like we create, like those are over now. Like Spirit is removing those from our life now, and like we don't know what's going to happen. So just go forth being as brave and as confident as we possibly can. Perhaps before things didn't go our way, but like that time is over, and we're stepping into a new way of life. So we get fluorite and it says sharpen your focus. Fluorite can range from pale green to deep purple. Often it's both at the same time. It occurs all over the place, and it's good to vibe with when you are all over the place. Who needs it? The perpetually distracted, anyone with a vision worth sticking to. Where to put it? Wherever you find yourself constantly tempted to check your phone, i.e. anywhere you have Wi-Fi access. When to use it, when you want to take an uninterrupted 20 minutes to meditate, an hour to finish a book, or a lifetime to concentrate on your unique calling here on earth. Sharpen your focus. So that's what's coming in here. It's like, stop wasting your time trying to please other people. Stop trying to, find ways to make it about other people. Stop trying to make, and then blame it on them when you don't live the life that you want to live. Stop trying to, if perhaps your parents wanted you to be something and you don't want to be that, but you're pursuing it anyway and you're unhappy, or like, as it says, trust the nickel, trust your intuition, do what it is that you're supposed to be doing and find that happiness, because ultimately anybody who loves you will be happy for you as long as you are happy. Focus on that. If you're trying to split your time between like your dream and like your day job, that is real and I understand that, but like never lose sight of what is really important, and be sure that you are constantly making, when the opportunities and choices are presented to you, don't choose fear, don't choose lack mindset, don't choose the lack of confidence and be like, oh, I'm going to do the less scary thing, because you're only going to be serving to keeping yourself out of joy and peace and prosperity longer, and that's really going to be on you. So I think like what this is saying is like, it's really time for us to live our dreams, and it's going to be a bumpy ride. It's not going to be exactly the easiest thing, but that's okay, and that's all part of it. And yeah, I think that's everything for this new moon and Lionsgate portal. I really like that, like this, doing the spread like this was a lot less all over the place. And so, yeah, I hope that you guys liked me doing it this way. And yeah, I think that's pretty much everything that I have to say. I will catch up with you all soon. I'll be back in New York soon, so things will get a little bit more normalized, and that'll be really amazing. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I love you all truly and deeply, and I hope that you had a really great new moon in Lionsgate portal.